A reading from the 3rd chapter of the book of James. Do you want to be counted wise, to build a reputation for wisdom? Here's what you do. Live well, live wisely, live humbly. It's the way you live, not the way you talk, that counts. Mean-spirited ambition isn't wisdom. Boasting that you are wise isn't wisdom. Twisting the truth to make yourself sound wise isn't wisdom. It's the furthest thing from wisdom. It's animal cunning, devilish plotting. Whenever you're trying to look better than others or to get the better of others, things fall apart and everyone ends up at each other's throats. Real wisdom, God's wisdom, begins with a holy life and is characterized by getting along with others. It is gentle and reasonable, overflowing with mercy and blessings, not hot one day and cold the next, not two-faced. You can develop a healthy, robust community that lives right with God and enjoy its results only if you do the hard work of getting along with each other, treating each other with dignity and honor. Where do you think all these appalling wars and quarrels come from? Do you think they just happen? Think again. They come about because you want your own way and fight for it deep inside yourselves. You lust for what you don't have and are willing to kill to get it. You want what isn't yours and will risk violence to get your hands on it. You wouldn't think of just asking God for it, would you? And why not? Because you know you'll be asking for what you have no right to. You're spoiled children, each wanting your own way. So let God work God's will in you. Yell aloud no to the evil one and watch him make himself scarce. Say a quiet yes to God and God will be there in no time. Quit dabbling in sin. Purify your inner life. Quit playing the field. Hit bottom and cry your eyes out. The fun and games are over. Get serious, really serious. Get down on your knees before the Master. It's the only way you'll get on your feet.
Sing praises, sing praises unto our King. Sing praises, sing praises, sing praises unto our King. Sing praises, 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 sing praises. He is King. He is King. God is King o'er all the earth. For God is King. For God is King. For God is King o'er all the earth. Is King o'er all the earth. Sing praises, sing praises, sing praises to God. He is risen. Sing praises, sing praises to God. He is risen. Sing praises, sing praises to God. For He is King. For He is King. Sing praises unto our King. Sing praises, sing praises, sing
Life is filled with ritual moments. From my very first appearance as infants, all the way across the arc of life, there are rituals that are shared. Some are in families. Churches certainly have them. The PTA of all things has them. Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, your high school, your college, your family of origin. They all have rituals. Robert Fulghum, the amazing commentary guy, everything I needed to know I learned in kindergarten about 30 years ago. He has just been one essay after another in writing about the arc of life. He talks about rituals as being, sometimes those are the dramas that are enacted in places where we can't really even say much, that it's beyond words, this experience. So we've just had a baptism. I can talk about baptism for all day, but there's an aspect of it that captures the drama that's carried out up here, captures some things that are beyond words, that are mystery. These proverbial words from the book of James that was read are both diagnostic and prescriptive. They're diagnostic in that they take a clinically honest look at the human heart. And it helps us to know ourselves with startling clarity. It unveils our motives, secret or otherwise. Then James offers us a way out. James, the physician of the heart, writes out a prescription as a balm for our wounds and offers us a treatment plan. All of us need a treatment plan of one kind or another. James offers us one so that we might have a healthier way of living in the Christian community. I mentioned that I teach at Central Seminary and I teach a doctoral class, and so it is filled with ministers and leaders of different organizations. They are the future leadership of the church in many ways, both here in the United States and in Myanmar, where some of them are from. One thing that I love about the work with them is that we get to talk openly and honestly about the nature of church and of ministers, and that the goal in life is that the congregation would seek to be a healthy congregation. But in order to do that, the minister must do his or her part by being healthy. Healthy leaders and healthy churches deserve one another, and they become something quite extraordinary. This is something of what James is talking about, which is to open up the realm, the conversation of the issue of healthiness. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, maybe you recall him as a novelist in Russia back during the Cold War days. He was imprisoned for years, and he produced a number of novels that were descriptive on rural farm life in Russia. And eventually he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature. This happened a long, long time ago. Although a faithful Russian officer in World War II, he served his country. He was imprisoned as a political dissident for offhandedly criticizing Joseph Stalin in a letter. It doesn't take much in these kinds of government systems to tick somebody off and then to find yourself in prison. While in prison, he wrote secretly of life in a Russian gulag, which is a prison, in clear and simple terms. It was startling to read this. I recall, I think I was in high school when all of this took place, and I recall the chatter about him and about his novel. It was in his writing that he turned the microscope of self-discovery not on everything that was wrong, but upon himself and the pitiful plight of a system that imprisoned men and women for their ideas. Solzhenitsyn came to some startling conclusions about himself and about others that might amplify these words from James. Here's what he said: "It was only when I lay there on rotting prison straw that I sensed within myself the first stirring of good. Gradually, it was disclosed to me that the line separating good and evil passes not through states, nor between classes, nor between political parties either, but right through the human heart. That is a stunning thing for him to write about, being imprisoned at the time. Our dilemma is how to hear this text then. It was read well, the ideas were there, you could sense them. Here are two responses that we could offer to it. One is to put up the walls of protection, a firewall, and to put it up around our mind and our ears and our emotions, and to not allow it to break through to where I really am and where I live. To close ourselves off from hearing God's message. And consequently, we fail to hear how it affects us personally. I've known ministers, I've known laypersons both, to do this. It's almost as if you can see the walls being constructed. We put up these elaborate defense barriers and we prevent the message from landing as a message intended to help us understand the reality of our own living. We fence ourselves off from God and God's probing desire to heal us from our faults and habits. We effectively put our fingers in our ears so that the sound of the message does not pierce through. We do not have to listen to it. And we block even God from speaking to us. The other way of hearing this text is one that I've mentioned several times here already, which is to open ourselves up to the message, to the story, to sense the story is reaching out to you, to me, to include us. It's not so much that it's 2,000 years ago and therefore about some other people and other issues. It's about us as well, the people of God. To let it inform us about the honesty of our struggle. It is to allow the Holy Spirit of God the freedom to speak to us about how our inner world is in such a clash with our sense of direction and the ethics by which we want to live in living our lives. It gives us two sets of responses. These two approaches of how to listen to the text, there are two sets of results. The first one is characterized by chaos or anger, selfish ambition, confusion. It's earthly, it's unspiritual. Envy and wickedness are evident. I'm talking about the inside of the people of God, the community of God. Bitterness and false truths. It almost sounds political today, doesn't it? The way this description is laid out. There's a disorder about the signals of the heart and about missing the mark. But then there's a second response, a second set of results that can also be gained. It's marked by purpose and peacefulness. We are a church and we are between seasons, I guess would be a way to understand it. We are between things right now. We have entered into this season of transition. That's what the conversations will be about in the next 2 months. It's marked by purpose and peacefulness, this period of time. It can be. Every Sunday we say the commitment that we have as a church. Every Sunday at the end of the service we say it. We'll say it today. And it is a description of purpose and peacefulness and a gentleness that's willing to yield to the greater needs of others. It's full of mercy and it puts forth the good fruits of the Spirit. Remember the fruits of the Spirit? There's no partiality in them. There's no hypocrisy. And finally, it results in a harvest of righteousness sown in peace. I don't know about you, but it took me a long while to understand who the Unitarians in our world was. I grew up in a suburb of Dallas, and we didn't talk about Unitarian thinking. We didn't talk about the philosophy of a Unitarian. I didn't know much until my atheist father began attending a Unitarian church in Dallas. And that opened me up to the theology and the writings of Unitarians. And normally I don't preach from a Unitarian point of view, but today I've got something from Forrester Church. Forrester Church was the long-serving pastor of the All Souls Unitarian Church in New York City. He was there for, 25 years. His father, you will know about. It was Frank Church, the senator from Idaho, I believe. He ran for president in 1980. He was a part of the national political leadership. His son, Forrest, was a Unitarian minister from Yale and Harvard both, and here's a line from him. The final war will not be a war between the children of light and the children of darkness. It will be what it has always been, a war within the children of life between the powers of light and the powers of darkness that dwell within each of us. He goes on, until the powers of light begin to prevail in our own lives, the world will not be safe from us, and we shall not be safe from one another or ourselves. That's quite a contrast, isn't it? A contrast about the reality of the world, the truth of the world, and it gives us two models of Christian community that we can recognize. One of our goals in this next year together is to think positively about the health of our community here. To think about what will it mean for us to be a healthy church? What will it mean for us, for our leaders to be healthy, for me to be healthy in my work with you, but for all of us to seek congregational community in a healthy way. One of the things it makes me think about is the church that I've always dreamed about. Maybe you have as well. And what characterizes this kind of church, the church that you dream about? Most churches have experienced a certain level of chaos and uncertainty. There's been grief here and loss for ourselves, and it's time to set a new course for ourselves. Here's what James prescribes. We've moved from diagnosis to the prescription now. First, he tells us to go back to the basics. Submit yourselves to God, he says. It just doesn't get much plainer than that. Secondly, he implores us to resist the evil one. The evil one could also be the evil one in me that wants my way of doing things to be against the idea of healthiness. Third, he says, draw near to God and God will draw near to you. There is a community that is based on our proximity and closeness to God. And lastly, he reminds us to cleanse your hands and purify your hearts. That is a part of an inner journey that some of us have taken and some have not. We're warned in these words of the challenge of being a dynamic, healing, healthy community, and that it's a challenge that's only possible when we set our hearts and minds on Christ. If we're to create the church that we've always dreamed of, we must want to be healthy and whole more than anything else. When we do that, we'll see all the possibilities that exist in our midst. One of my favorite writers is Harper Lee, the late Harper Lee. The Harper Lee bookshelf in my library is rather short. There's just two books that she published. She reached a turning point when she was young. She was a young, struggling writer working for one of the airlines in New York City. And she was just working to support herself. And then she was trying to write in her off time. New York is one of the most invigorating creative cities in the world. But after several years of working for the airline, she wasn't making very much progress. So Christmas Eve, she went to the home of a couple who were friends of hers. They invited her in. They had children. They had a big meal. They started doing their typical family Christmas Eve stuff. And the husband said to Harper Lee, "We didn't forget you. There's an envelope for you on the tree." Sure enough, there was one. It had her name on it. And in it was a note, a very simple note. "You have 1 year off from your job to write whatever you please. Merry Christmas." And she said, "What does this mean?" And the man said to her, "It means exactly what you think it means." It was not some sort of a joke. They had had a good year, this couple. They had saved some money, and they thought it was high time, quote, they did something about her. She was curious about what that meant. "What do you mean, do something about me?" They said it was plain to anyone if they would stop to look. They wanted to show their faith in the best way they knew how, and whether she ever sold a line or not, this was not part of the deal. They wanted her to have a year off to be able to write to her heart's content. They wanted her to give a full, fair chance to learn her craft, free from the harassments of a regular job. There were no strings attached. And they asked whether she would accept their gift with their love. And it took some time for her to find her voice. "It's a fantastic gamble. It's such a great risk," she mumbled. They responded, "No, honey, it's not a risk. It's a sure thing," speaking confidently about her. You see, we never know about the possibilities that are buried deep within us until someone comes along and opens that up to us. The possibility of what you might be able to accomplish in the world, something immeasurable, the wildest hopes and dreams. And when we do that, we think of one another in holy ways. This is what happens. We will set those dreams free to become the reality that God wants set loose in the world. Jesus came into the world to build a church that sees the possibilities in one another. Anyway, that's the church I dream about, the church that I've always wanted. How about you?